All right, so I hope everyone is ready and super excited to learn about Google Analytics today. My name is Liz Day, and I will be the one walking us through today's presentation. So thanks again for taking the time out of your busy schedules to sit with me as we walk our way through this tracking platform. So without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and get started. So in today's webinar, I'm going to go ahead and cover a few things. And just for you all that aren't aware, today's webinar is going to be for those beginners, people that don't have a whole lot of experience accessing Google Analytics. Maybe some of you don't even necessarily have an account right now, or maybe some of you do, but you just don't necessarily know what to get out of it. So one of the first things that I want to talk about is what is Google Analytics. And the second thing is why you should use it. Third, how do you get started? And then the fourth is exactly outlining what are some of the things that you can really get from having a Google Analytics account, and what are some of those main reports that we use here internally at rezStream. So a little bit about myself. I am a Senior Digital Marketing Account Manager here at rezStream. I've been with rezStream now for over 4 years, and so my main responsibilities here is working really closely with our clients and making sure that their online marketing program is headed in the right direction and that it's performing well. I am I was born in San Diego, California, then raised in Peoria, Illinois. And after graduation, I made the move out here to Denver, Colorado, and now have been here for several years and love it. Something unique that you probably don't know about me is that I do love dogs. Unfortunately, I'm not yet a dog owner, but it is something that I have on my big to-do list for the next year. And I am the oldest of 5 kids. So for those of you that don't know rezStream, we're a pretty small company. We have been around since 2005. We are located here in Denver, Colorado. We have about 21 team members here in and out of the office. Majority of our clients are independently owned properties, so we're super excited to be able to work with those smaller brands. With rezStream's Hospitality Suite, we offer a reservation software that's really been the foundation of rezStream. And over the years, we've added an online booking engine. We have a digital services side of the company, which includes a website design team and a digital marketing team. Other services that we do offer include a global distribution system connection, so GDS. And then Joe Jenkins here helps our clients with their professional photography and videography services. So let's go ahead and kind of get started on what today's webinar is all about, and that is Google Analytics. So for those of you that aren't super familiar with Google Analytics, it was originally developed from a company called Urchin On Demand. And Google then bought Urchin and acquired that in the spring of 2005. So the first Google branded version of Google Analytics was released in November 2005. A little fun fact for those of you that like the little nuggets of fun information, Google Analytics was actually an invitation-only platform. So it wasn't until nearly August 2006 when they started making it free for everyone. So that's definitely one of the really big selling points of utilizing Google Analytics for your website tracking platform. So let's go ahead and talk about why you should start using analytics. So obviously, it allows you to track your website performance so you can get a better sense of where your visitors are coming from, what pages are performing well. If your booking engine supports Google Analytics, you can tie some revenue figures to those different reports, which is extremely helpful and recommended. The number 2 bullet there is obviously because it's free, so why not take advantage of something that will offer you additional information that you don't have access to already, especially if there's no cost tied to it. It integrates with other Google products, so if you are participating in Google's pay-per-click platform, which is Google Adwords, you can actually link your Google Analytics account up with your Google Adwords to get additional information as well as reporting. And for those of you that have a Google Webmaster Tools account, you can essentially do the same thing. They've allowed you to link up to these other Google platforms to then get additional information on your website's health as well as performance. And obviously one of my favorites is that it's just super easy to use. So you really don't need to have a whole lot of technical background to get some of that main information from analytics. And as you'll see as we go through it, there are some very easy reports already predetermined for you to just select and then view and analyze and take those pieces of information that you find useful to then turn your marketing program around to make sure that it's working effectively for you. So one question that we constantly get is, how does Google Analytics work? And I'm going to walk us through how you can set up an account, but really Google Analytics provides a tracking script, and with that tracking script that you implement on every single page of your website, they use cookies to track visitor action. And so a cookie is essentially a text file that enables Google Analytics to capture some of that information about the visitor or about the visitor's computer. So let's talk about how you can get started. So one of the first things that you're going to want to do is go to google.com/analytics, and you'll see this landing page, and you'll want to select the create an account. rezStream, whenever we set up Google Analytics account, we set it up under a unique email address, so we don't necessarily recommend tying it to your personal email address. The reason being is in the event that you have to transfer ownership or you just want to keep that data separate, you have the option to do so. So definitely select the create an account on that landing page, and then from there you'll be prompted to fill out your account information. So this is where they'll bring you, and you can see those 3 steps that they'll kind of outline for you that you need to work your way through in order to get your account completely set up. So go ahead and select that sign up button that's highlighted there with the green box. And then make sure that you fill out all your account information. So you can see here that you want to make sure that your account name reflects your business's name. For those of you that have just one property that you're wanting to track under this main account, make sure that you identify what that unique business's name is. Go ahead and make sure that that website URL that you're implementing reflects the website that you're wanting to track. We recommend selecting the industry category, and I'll give you a sneak preview as to why you'll want that later on in the webinar. And make sure that you have the reporting time zone correct. So if you're in Colorado, you want to make sure that that reflects Mountain Time. So it's important to take your time as you're filling this out and to make sure that everything you're implementing is accurate. Once you're done with that, go ahead and select Get Tracking ID. So from here, you'll just simply grab this tracking code. You can see that the tracking ID, which is that UA number that you see on the screen, that is your own individual social security in a way for your Google Analytics account. So for those of you that have a website team, you'll just want to copy this and provide it to them. And make sure that you tell them to implement this tracking code on every single page of your website. For those of you that have a booking engine that supports Google Analytics, there may be some additional steps that you'll need to take to make that happen. And I'll touch upon what are some of the settings that you'll want to make sure that you implement on your end before seeing those numbers come through on those reports. So if you are implementing the revenue tracking, you'll want to make sure that you go to your account settings, select at the account level to the e-commerce settings, which is highlighted there in red, and you'll want to make sure that you just turn that on. So if you don't have that feature turned on, unfortunately, Google Analytics will not be able to report on revenue numbers or online reservations that you're generating through your website's booking engine. So it's super important that you have that turned on. And then once that's turned on, you'll want to confirm that your website team or your website developer has everything implemented correctly. And then from there, it's just simply monitoring the reports to make sure you see data coming through, including those revenue numbers. So one best practice that we suggest following is creating a filter. So a filter in this particular example is preventing your own property website visits from being reported in your data. So in order for you to truly get a sense of how many real visitors that you have landing on your website that aren't either, it could be team members or employees on site, you want to make sure that you grab their IP addresses, and you can go to a website like ipchicken.com, or you can simply just type in IP address in Google, and you'll be able to see from your computer on the property what that IP address is, so that you can go to the filters column in your account settings to then say, I want to exclude this IP address. And like I said, that will allow, it's basically you telling Google Analytics, I do not want my own website visits coming from this IP address to be tracked in my reports. And there's a lot of other examples that you can use filters for, but as you can see, it really just helps when it comes to including or excluding certain pieces of data. After you get done, you want to go ahead and press save, and so you may have several IP addresses depending on the size of your property. So then once you have everything loaded in correctly, go ahead and press save. And then some other things that you'll want to think about before you go ahead and close the book on Google Analytics setup is thinking about linking to those other Google products that I was mentioning earlier. So if you do have a Google Adwords account and you want to track how that account is performing for you, including website visitors or revenue figures, go ahead and make sure that you're linking that up. Again, you can find this feature in the account settings dashboard in your account, and you can also do the same thing for Google Webmaster Tools. So if you do have those accounts, go ahead and link them up and make sure that you see everything coming through appropriately to know that you did it correctly. So from there, if you want to track any sort of specific goals, you'll want to make sure that you set that up. So goals are essentially a way for you to track specific user actions. So a typical example of us setting up a form or a goal for a client is if they have a wedding form on their website, if they want to track how many people are filling out the Contact Us form on their website, you can go ahead and set up a goal using that thank you URL once that form is submitted to then measure how many times people are filling it out and submitting the information to you. Here on the screen, you can see there's other types of goals that you can track, and so reservations, if you have that revenue tracking option available, we recommend setting that up. People can go ahead and track the amount of reviews that are submitted on their website, and you can also track very small engagement actions. So if people are clicking on a certain button and you want to know how many times that button is being pressed, you can go ahead and set up a goal for that. So setting up goals is definitely something that we recommend. It's not mandatory, but it does allow you, again, to have additional information for you to really understand how things are performing and to identify areas of opportunity. A popular thing that we do is provide a amount of account users. So if you have a large property and you have several people that are interested in receiving reports or looking or accessing the information, this is a great feature to use. With our clients, they are interested in learning more about their own account, and so typically what we'll do is we'll add them as a user. And then there's different levels of users that you can add. So you can go ahead and allow somebody to manage. So that's really an admin feature. If you want to be able to give somebody the opportunity to just read and analyze, so not necessarily touch anything that could change the account's data, you can go ahead and provide them with that read and analyze option. And collaborate and edit just gives them additional opportunities to edit the account and to create certain reports if that's necessary and if that's something that they want to do. So again, this can be super helpful if you really want to allow several people to see the information at any given time. So now that we've kind of walked our way through what Google Analytics is, why you should use it, and how to set it up, let's go ahead and talk a little bit about what it can help you measure. So the first thing that I want to make a point on is that when you're looking at data, you want to make sure that you're selecting time periods that make the most sense. So you want to make sure that you're taking advantage of this upper right-hand corner date range, and that will allow you to really select any sort of period that you want to review and analyze. So if I wanted to see what my website visitors was for yesterday, I could do that. You can go ahead and select for last month, last quarter, this month. It's really up to you on what you want to select and analyze. You can also see underneath there, you have the option to compare. So this is super helpful if you have year-over-year data. You know, in the travel industry, people in properties can go through trends and seasonality changes. So typically what we do here at rezStream is really try to compare using year-over-year data. So for that, I would just select the date range that I'm wanting to analyze for 2014, and then I would select the compare to previous year option. If you don't have much data to review, since if you just set it up, you know, last month, go ahead and use the previous period. If you're wanting to get some sort of sense of how things are trending, or you know, just to get a sense of what's improving or what's not improving, so that you can get some additional information and make those program adjustments. So one of the first reports that I wanted to go over was the all traffic report. So this is a huge report that, you know, is definitely an important one when you're wanting to measure where your traffic is coming from and from what particular websites. So this particular report is super helpful for us, especially when we're making recommendations on how to improve certain revenue figures, or maybe just answering questions about, you know, hey, I invested in this bedandbreakfast.com listing, it cost me $2,000, what am I getting out of it? So you can see here that I selected to see the revenue figures, and again, that is super helpful. So if any of you don't have revenue tracking implemented, I do recommend you contacting your booking engine today to see what you can do to go ahead and get that integrated. So this, to break this down, the source /medium, that really reflects the website's URL as well as the channel. So the source, the first part of that, is really identifying the source's website URL. So typically you'll see Google, bedandbreakfast.com, TripAdvisor, and then the second part of that column is medium. So medium is really the traffic channel that it's associated to. So if you're wanting to measure how your search engine optimization efforts are paying off, you can go ahead and just select to view the organic medium. And you can also segment this out by other channels like email marketing, referral website, as well as your pay-per-click accounts. The second column that you'll see, which is sessions, this is the total number of visits to your website. So if a user is inactive on your website for 30 minutes, Google will go ahead and record that as a second session. So this is essentially a replacement of what they used to refer to as website visitors or visits. The revenue you can see is the total amount of online reservations that were generated through the booking engine, and then transactions is the total amount of online reservations generated. So you can see here for this particular example, this client received 4,429 sessions from Google Organic and generated $53,000, close to $54,000 in online revenue, which was a result of them totaling 57 online reservations. So you can see here how important this basic report can be when it comes to evaluating your overall marketing channels. The second report that I want to talk about is your Google AdWords report. So most of our clients are participating in this program, and so I felt like it was really important to touch upon this to ensure that everyone knows some of the reports that they can be receiving on this side of analytics. So these reports really show you what happened after people clicked on your Google AdWords and arrived on your site. So you can see a lot of different metrics there. Pretty much you can get traffic, engagement metrics, time on site, revenue generated, and you can really break this down from campaign to the Google AdWords ad group to even the keyword level. So again, you know, as we work our way through this left to right-hand side, sessions are going to be those visits. Percentage of new sessions is going to be the percentage of visitors that haven't been to your website before as a result of that Google AdWords account. New visitors is essentially the amount of new users that have landed, and they're unique to that time period that you're evaluating. A bounce rate is the percentage of visits in which the visitor only viewed one page of your website before leaving. So this is a really important metric that we like to pay attention to. Ideally, you want to see your bounce rate between 30 to 40%. It's one of those weird metrics where if the number goes up, it's not necessarily a good thing. You want the bounce rate to be as low as possible. So anytime you have that bounce rate between 30 to 40%, if not lower, that's really positive. The pages /session, so that's pages per session, that's essentially the average amount of pages being viewed from those users. So repeated views of a single page are counted. And so really when it comes to this metric, when you're seeing higher numbers, that can be a very positive thing. And if you're seeing lower numbers, that can also be a positive thing. It could just mean that the visitors are finding the information that they want very quickly. So you really want to utilize all of these different behavior metrics to get a good sense of how the page or the keyword is performing. So as you can see here, the bounce rate associated on the rows 1 through 4 are fairly positive, and the pages per session shows that the visitors that are landing on the website are engaging with the content that they're landing on, which is super positive. And then you have the average session duration, which is essentially the average time spent by each visitor on the website. So that shows 3 minutes and 18 seconds for the first row. And as a reminder, you have those transactions and revenue e-commerce columns to let you know how many online reservations are coming from that particular keyword, as well as the amount of revenue that that keyword has totaled as a result of those online reservations being generated. So, you know, really the main takeaway here is being able to see what keywords are still working for you. And unfortunately, Google is really cutting down on the amount of keyword data that they're providing for your organic referrals. So if you do have a Google AdWords account, this is a great report because Google is still giving 100% of keyword referral data. And you can utilize these keywords that are working effectively for you in your SEO program. So that's one big takeaway that I recommend taking advantage of when you are utilizing this AdWords report feature. All right, the third report that I wanted to touch upon was the location report. So the location report is under that audience tab, and the audience reports really are there to provide insight into your audience's characteristics. So this can include demographics as well as mobile devices that they're using to land on your website. So for this particular report, which is the geographic location, this can assist you in better targeting your audience. So you can get a really good idea of where your visitors are coming from. You can narrow this down from, you know, country level all the way down to a metro city location. So you can get as granular as you'd like when it comes to looking at this report. And as you see here, I didn't do a year-over-year comparison. I just stuck with the basic date range that I wanted to evaluate. But again, if you go ahead and select in that upper right-hand corner that you want to compare year-over-year or even to the previous period, you'll be able to see some percentage differences or improvements. So here for this example, you can see that they've listed by city, and obviously the state that we're evaluating is California. And then again, you'll see some of those familiar metrics that we just touched upon in that earlier report, where they'll provide you with the sessions, percentage of new sessions, new users, and then all the way through to the e-commerce report. Another helpful report under the audience tab is the mobile. And so, mobile users and mobile reports continue to become an important report that we like to look at because it just continues to grow. So we really like to utilize the overview as well as the devices report to give us a good sense of how those users are performing, as well as potentially indicating some areas of opportunity. We do have some clients that don't necessarily have a mobile-friendly website, so if we see that the mobile and tablet users are growing, but they're just not necessarily converting, we may want to recommend getting a mobile-friendly solution because there's some opportunities there that are being missed. So for this particular example, number one is desktops. And so those are visitors using laptops or even desktops at their home. And then you have number two, which is mobile. So those are smartphone users. So that could be, your iPhone users as well as your Android users. And then the third one there is tablets. So that could be Kindles as well as iPads. And so you can see here by device what those particular users are doing for you in terms of traffic figures as well as revenue and transaction figures. So this is a pretty typical report, and these figures overall seem to be pretty in line with what we're seeing across the board, and that's just that mobile and tablet are growing at a very high percentage. So I would encourage everyone to access this report and take a look at what are the type of different device users that are landing on your website. So the other report that I want to talk about is the All Pages report. So the behavior section of Google Analytics allows you to really hone in on the content and the performance and the usability of your website, on how people are flowing through it. So this particular report, the All Pages, allows you to identify new opportunities as well as look at how each individual page is performing as a whole. So for this, this report internally, we really like to identify what pages are performing very well and what pages are not performing so well, so that we can make a point of improving those metrics. The last thing that you want to do is start adding new pages to your website when you have a majority of your pages that still aren't performing in those best practices or in those recommended benchmarks. So as you kind of go through here, you'll see the number one is the home page, which is that backslash. So if you see that, just know that that is typically going to be the number one page that people land on. And then you can kind of break it down from there, which is the accommodations page. Typically we'll see a lot of packages and specials. If you do offer weddings or conferences and meetings, you'll want to see those pages show up in the top 10. If they're, in the 20s to the 50s, you'll want to do some work in evaluating on your website on how you can encourage more views on that page. And as you break it through, we have page views. So that's the amount of times that people are looking at that particular page. So if you have one visitor that lands on your website and they view that page several times, page views will count every single time that they land on that particular URL. So take that into account. The unique page views is just unique visitors landing on those individual URLs. The average time on page is the amount of time that they're spending on that page. So the home page for this example, they're spending around a little more than a minute. You want to make sure that that average time on page is is around that minute mark. If you have somebody that's landing and only sticking for 10 seconds, you have a little bit of an issue there. And I would take a closer look at the content on your page and maybe the usability and figuring out how you can encourage those people to stick a little longer and even click through to view another page. Entrances is the amount of times that people are landing on that page as the first page when they land on your property site. A bounce rate, again, is going to be the percentage of visitors that land on that page and don't necessarily take a step forward in viewing another page. And the exit rate is a particular page that they're leaving your website from. So with the percentage of exit rates, you want to make sure that that number is low, not high. If you do have a very high exit rate on one of your pages, you'll want to take a closer look again on opportunities that you could potentially encouraging them to stay. So an exit rate, something that gets a little confusing sometimes, is telling the difference between a bounce rate and an exit rate. So a bounce rate is taking into account the first page that the visitor lands on and leaves from that page, whereas the exit rate is that page that they're just leaving from. So you could have visitors that have visited 3 or 4 other pages before they land on that page that they're leaving. So that's really the key difference there between those two metrics. So as we're kind of concluding this webinar, I wanted to share some exciting news that Google just recently announced. They put this out yesterday, so it's really, really fresh and exciting. What they're doing is announcing that they're going to be rolling out some new benchmark reports over the next few weeks. So benchmark reports are going to be super helpful for you to get a good sense of how do you compare to what the averages across these metrics are for the travel industry. And then again, that will allow you to identify what are some huge areas that you need to improve on, or maybe identify what are some amazing things that you're doing really well with. So for those of you that are interested, we'll most likely rezStream will be pushing out a blog, and we'll put it on our Facebook page and our other social media networks to announce the good news once it's live. But once it is live and Google has rolled it out, you can go ahead and access this report under that audience section of the reporting interface. And you'll want to make sure, though, in order to receive these benchmarks, that you go to your account settings and you opt in to share the data anonymously. So I provided you with an idea of what that benchmark report will look like, and you can get a good sense of how you can see the ups and downs compared to how the rest of the travel industry is averaging. And you'll want to go to the admin account settings and check the anonymously with Google and others setting adjustment to ensure that you can access this information once it is live. I'm very excited about it. So to kind of conclude today's webinar, here's some major takeaways that I have for you. One, make sure that you set up your free Google Analytics account today if you haven't already. Ensure that your account settings are correct. So even if you do have your account set up and it's been set up for several months now, I encourage you to go back and make sure that you have IP address filters enabled, that you have your e-commerce data turned on, if you do have the rest of your revenue tracking implemented. If you want to track specific goals or leads, make sure you set up those goals within that account setting dashboard. The third thing, utilize those time periods to analyze data. So don't just take a week's worth of data and look at it and try to make some major marketing improvements with your program. Utilize the historical data that you have access to really get a good sense of if you're improving or if you're not improving, and also to identify some of those major areas of opportunity. Another one is just exploring. So taking some time and diving into your account and looking at all the different other reports. I mean, I really only touched upon the main reports, but there's a lot of other pieces of information that Google has made available from the tracking platform, so I definitely encourage you to take advantage of that. And then lastly, you know, it's one thing to just have access to the information. It's an even greater thing if you're looking at it and you're comparing, but if you're not really truly making any sort of adjustments to your marketing program, it's really not that useful to you. So make sure that you are looking at the data and you're making adjustments as you see fit. So with that being said, that's all I have for today's webinar. Again, I really appreciate you all taking the time to chat with me. Let me go ahead and check if I have any questions. It doesn't look like I have any. So I went ahead and I provided my personal email address, phone number, and please connect with us on Facebook, Twitter, Google+, and our blog to continue to receive exciting information as it relates to these Google Analytics reports. But I think I'm going to go ahead and let you all go. Again, thank you so much, and we will hopefully see you in the upcoming webinar. Have a great day.